Hello. Thank you for all coming this evening. I'm Barbie Smith with Student Services. Welcome to our fourth of 6 Parent Engaged 360 events this year. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. The format for this evening will begin with our very own Will Powell, tech teacher from Roosevelt Middle School, who will be sharing information for the part of tonight. We'll then move into our panel discussion for the second part of our event. We have participants here in person with us this evening, as well as online. The presentation will be recorded, and we will be following up tomorrow by sharing this recording, a survey, and other relevant information. Let's begin this evening with Will.
Thank you, Barbie. Well, tonight we are going to be talking about social media, gaming, and mental health. And it's a great opportunity to reevaluate basically how our students are using their devices. We've gone through a lot of changes, and so we'll address some of those tonight. Once again, my name is Will Powell. I'm the technology coordinator at Roosevelt Middle School. I also teach 8th grade. You'll meet some of my students later on tonight. I work with the virtual middle school, which is new to us in the district this year. We've learned a lot through that practice. And I'm a general tech enthusiast. If it is a computer, if it's a gadget, I really enjoy it until it gets to my broken remote control at home or some other object. I don't want to deal with it. So during the day, I love this stuff. But we all have our breaking point. The presentation will be distributed, but if you would like to take a screenshot of this QR code, it'll load the presentation for anyone to see. So this presentation is put together by Common Sense Media. It is a great organization that we use as tech teachers to understand what applications our students might be using. It's a bit of our go-to. They have an excellent website where parents can go and learn background information on sites such as Discord. You've probably heard that if you have a middle school student, and some of us just don't have the background knowledge to have a discussion on Discord. So you can see that it's a short 1-minute video that parents can watch and learn a bit more about it. And in fact, teachers can watch, anyone can watch. It also talks about popular apps, such as Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat. So I would highly recommend using this website to gain some background knowledge. It's also put together by the Child Mind Institute. We often talk about, in the past, basically, let's go back, the Child Mind Institute, which looks at how students think, the development of the brain, and how that may impact their decision making. So going to this slide now, I've been doing this since about 2010, talking about internet safety. This was a partnership we did with the Star Tribune. So we've had a long time to look at how things change, and some things always stay the same. So in 2013, my presentation was largely based upon making sure that you always have do not share your personal information, and the creepy guy that you might be talking to, which I always seem to get a laugh from my students. In 2022,
I can't stop looking at my phone, but I'm not alone.
What makes our students make decisions to stay engaged with social media, to learn some boundaries, and how can we use these tools to improve their digital well-being? So tonight, we're going to cover a few topics. It'll be roughly about 45 minutes of a presentation. So the big picture, what's happening to students' mental health? What's happened over the past few years? Brain development. We often say to ourselves, gosh, what were they thinking? Well, their brains are not developed yet, so we need to help them along. 4 big buckets here: comparison, pressure, drama, and isolation, which we've seen an increase of all of those during the pandemic. And then the worst case signs, what to look for as parents and caregivers. And then the potential positive. What's the good news? I do this because I really love technology, and I love students engaging with technology in a positive way. So the big picture, what's happening with mental health? Well, this presentation was put together in 2018, so we know a lot has changed. So back in 2018, we know that between 13 and 20% of children have a mental disorder in a given year. We saw an increase in depression. We know that suicide is the second leading cause of death amongst ages 15 to 24. And we also know those who use the greatest amount of social media are also the most at risk. But on the other hand, it's hard to know if social media alone is causing this. And there's probably many other factors that we need to consider. And some of those other variables we'll talk about, such as sleep, physical health, exercise, and so on. And we have to talk about the pandemic. It's been a few years like no other. Our students have transitioned in and out of schools. Teachers have transitioned in and out of schools. So let's look at some data here. So during the pandemic, we know that there's been an increase in anxiety, depression, sleep issues, withdrawing from family, and aggressive behavior. We see this more prevalent in girls, but that might be simply because boys don't report it as often. So it's not to say that it's not there. And looking at some research about this, it was tough to find a conclusion. Yes, we know that some of these rates are rising, but we also know there were some good things about social media, such as the possibility that screen time may not negatively interfere with well-being, as it was the only way to remain connected. But on the other hand, we also know that there was a 50 to 70% increase in internet use during this time. So it's time to find our balance once again. This graph talks about 4 hours of internet use per day by age group. The light blue says prior to COVID. The dark blue says since COVID. So in our age group that we're talking about today, let's look at 14 to 17-year-olds. A 32% increase prior to COVID, and now a 62%. That's a dramatic increase. So what we know about their use. We know that students who use the most amount might be the unhappiest. We know that what they're using it for matters. Those who might be simply sitting in the background and watching and not posting, it might have a more damaging impact upon them versus someone who has a healthy relationship with social media, where they are posting fun things about their friends, where they're posting fun things about their family. Those are healthy things we can do. And we also know that there's balance. And I think that's what we need to really look at, is the balance aspect since COVID. So what are they thinking? Of course, my 8th graders are always perfect. I have 2 of them here. But occasionally, they might not choose the right task. And why is that? Well, it's because their brain's not developed. So think of the prefrontal cortex as the orchestra director, trying to keep everything in motion, trying to make healthy decisions. We know that it's not fully developed until they're 24. So we have a ways to go. So when a student makes a mistake in my class, I need to remind myself that it's a teaching opportunity. Yes, they make me angry. There's no doubt about that. But I've learned to have patience, grace during this time, and know that it's a teachable moment. We also know that at the middle level, that thing that happened that day is the worst thing ever, and they'll never overcome it. And it's like that brick wall. Teaching them resiliency. How can they have coping skills to improve their decision making? And at this level, friends are really important. Teachers, I know I might not be their favorite person in the world, and I'll tell you a reason why they might not think so after this past week. But friends are very important. We're going to recognize that and help them have positive relationships that are online and offline. So bottom line, we know that we are there to help them to understand that the brain is still developing, and we'll work together within the community so that they'll make positive decisions. And with this, the power of yet, they're not there yet. And honestly, we had a discussion the other day that some of our 7th graders, the middle school students, aren't acting like 7th graders. Well, it's probably because they haven't been in school as 7th graders, or they weren't in school as 6th graders. So we're trying to catch them up. We need to teach them the skills that they might have missed during the pandemic. So during the pandemic, prior to the pandemic, we had Chromebooks in carts. Teachers used them on an as-needed basis, to the pandemic hits, I'm throwing Chromebooks in the back of a pickup truck and driving them to Blaine High School. It was insane, the most insane thing I've ever had happen in my career. So then we turned to a position where we had Google Classroom going, we had chats going, and we just turned everything on because we had to. We didn't know, we were trying to give opportunities for students to be successful and students to learn. So what we've done since then, and much of this has happened this school year, at the middle level, and I'll speak a lot about the middle level because that's what I know best. We've turned off Google Chat. We found that it was a bit too impulsive for our students. We have Google Meet turned on, but the teacher needs to start that Google Meet. We never allowed for the phone call aspect, and we allow Google Docs. Students can collaborate with each other, they can create content, they can share it with their teachers. Those are all successful. And then this school year at the middle level, we added in GoGuardian, which allows a teacher to set additional boundaries. We have an internet filter, but we also have the ability to limit websites within the classroom, which my students just love when I do that, see their screens, and open web links for them. So layers of protection. What we do at school is due to federal regulation, we provide internet filtering. And at home, the question might be, is your internet filtered? Do you allow students to access anything on the web? And this is a difficult piece. It takes some tech savviness on your end, or on parents' end, caregivers' end, to have the right settings in place. I know half the time I can't figure out my internet and I just hope it works. Nice restart. Also at the middle school level, this week, referencing back to why I have 800 middle school students who are unhappy with me right now, we reduced their ability, eliminated their ability, to pick and choose whatever extension they want. And that's because most of our students, or a lot of them, due to their impulsive behavior, were downloading games, trying to hide it, as good as a 12 and 13-year-old does, to your home. Do you allow students or your children to download anything? Or do you have restrictions in place where they have to ask an adult or caregiver? Finally, you heard me talk about GoGuardian in the classroom, where I can see their screens, I can see their history. Using the built-in features of things like iOS, such as time limits, or buying third-party services where you can monitor your children's use. I'm not saying these are for every child, but I think based upon your knowledge of your child and their past behavior, some of these or all of these could be beneficial. So we're using these features to keep your children safe, to keep them engaged, and keep them productive in class. And unfortunately, I have 800 middle school students who are extremely angry with me right now, but it's for the best, and they've been really good sports about it. And what's been really nice is it's encouraged a lot of conversation about what is appropriate. And hey, Mr. Powell, can you get me this extension? So heading into our 4 buckets: comparison, pressure, drama, and isolation. So comparison, we know as those friendships develop in the online world and using social media, there's a lot of comparison. And I know this happens to adults as well. We know that students are using apps, and I use students because, and I should really just say adults and students, are using apps to alter images, such as, well, I'll show you a few in just a moment, looking for the presentation of perfection, taking 100 pictures and posting the best one, focusing on the superficial, highly sexualized images, instant judgment, where you post something and you're waiting for that instant feedback. And we know that it's available 24/7 versus what much of us grew up with. When we left school, it stayed at school. The measuring tape, social media measuring tape. It's hard for a teenage student to understand how they may measure up to their friends. And social media makes that harder. That they want to be more successful, that their looks don't measure up, and they want to look for their online perfection online, a very curated experience that doesn't show the reality in which we might live. So I went through the App Store and looked for some popular photo editing apps. And this was just a random search. I downloaded Facetune 2 just to see what it does, and I didn't quite realize what I could all do with Facetune 2, and I had hair, blue eyes, and it was real great by the end. Everlook, and these are just random ones. I was very surprised by BodyTune, the ability to reshape your body before you post the picture. And FaceApp. While these seem interesting, while they seem lighthearted, if a student is constantly using these to alter the image, it could be harmful to their self-awareness of who they are. So how to help? After each one of these buckets, there will be a bit of a how to help. Take the effects seriously of social media. It's very easy to downplay when a student gets upset. Oh, that's fine, just get over it. But when they are in a 24/7 experience with social media, it's really important to lead with empathy and questions and dialogue. The duck syndrome, I like this because you see a duck swimming across a lake, but what we often don't talk about is what's happening under the water, where a duck's feet are going like crazy to try to keep up. That's what we don't see on social media. We see the curated experience. So pulling back that curtain, having the conversation that yes, Kim Kardashian has a team of people, of photographers, of makeup artists. Which filter did she use? Having those conversations that it's not real. And then finally admitting that we make mistakes as well. I grew up in MySpace and Facebook. I've made mistakes. I've posted things without that I would have liked to take back, that I've since changed. So making sure that students know that as adults we sometimes make mistakes. Now, pressure. It is really hard, the pressure that social media might put on a 12, 13, 14-year-old. And it's even more pressure when you're facing a tech giant trying to get a young person to engage with social media. So in this section, we'll take a look at the constant communication that phones provide. Yes, it's great, but it's always on. FOMO, the sneaky tech tricks, which was a focus of the last movie, that was in this forum, which was fantastic. We'll talk a little bit about that. The idea that we always have to stay connected to our friends and how much information this provides. So multitasking. In my classroom, I would ask students to do a task, and let's say this was prior to having some of these tools we put into place. I would see them using an extension to play the snake game, using an extension to play another game, possibly having Spotify in a tab, talking with their friends in Google Chat. That's a lot going on for a 13-year-old mind, or even my mind. So we know that having all of these distractions could cause issues for our students. So that's why we decided to put policies in place to try to eliminate the distractions. So looking for that balanced approach, because if students are constantly distracted, it might lead to failure, which might lead to more failure. And you get in that rut of just not feeling successful, which could be harmful to a student. We also know the importance of sleep. If you've walked into a middle school in the morning, you know who has been up all night, who has not. And students are very honest. If you say, wow, are you tired? Yep, I was playing a game all night long. Or, yep, I was on my phone, making sure things were working well and I was staying connected with my friends. Fairly honest about it when we ask. But we know that devices like these that are kept in the bedroom often have detrimental impact upon students' sleep and their ability to disconnect. So how are we creating safe spaces where they can disconnect? The never-ending notifications. So did a wonderful job of talking about the psychology of notifications and how tech companies use algorithms to keep us engaged. And why do we do that? Well, it's FOMO. But I really liked the individual in this movie that talked about JOMO, the joy of missing out. At what point do we want that joy? And I get it. For a teenager, they want to stay engaged. Think of it as a bit of a popularity contest. If I don't engage, I might be left out from the next conversation. I might not know what happened when I walk into school tomorrow. Wanting the information nonstop. And for better or worse, there's a digital footprint that I need to watch, I need to guard, I need to make sure I'm not the subject of the conversation. And if I am, how do I engage to change course of that? And so this was a comment from the creator of the like button. When I think about the origin of the like button, there was a real innocence in it. What I didn't anticipate was the effect that a number, that a count can have on a human being. Keeping score, I guess, is what we've always done with games, but now we're keeping score with popularity, with likes. I just had a birthday, and I had to see how many people wrote on my wall. It happens to all of us. If people aren't excited about it, do you take it down? And so part of this,
I can't stop
about
looking at my phone.
part
But
of
I'm
this
not
next
alone.
video
Over
will
2.5
be
billion people have
basically the psychology behind it and what tech companies do to try to keep us engaged.
Can't stop looking at my phone. But I'm not alone. Over 2.5 billion people have smartphones now, and a lot of them are having a hard time putting them down.
There's a new app that aims to curb phone addiction.
Addiction is money.
Are we a nation of smartphone addicts?
The problem is, our devices are designed to keep us engaged. They're intentionally addicting. But if you understand the tricks that grab your attention, you can learn to have a healthier relationship with your phone.
I think we're living inside of 2 billion Truman shows where, Truman Show, you wake up and everything is sort of coordinated just for you and you usually don't even realize it. But it's coordinating just to entertain you or just to engage you.
That's Tristan Harris. He worked as Google's design ethicist, and now he runs a nonprofit initiative called Time Well Spent, advocating for awareness of how tech companies profit off of users' attention.
It's not designed to help us, it's just designed to keep us hooked.
So I handed him my phone
Yeah.
and asked him how he'd fix it. It starts with turning off all notifications, except for when a real human is trying to reach you. When you get a call, a text, or a message, it's usually because another person wants to communicate with you. But a lot of today's apps simulate the feeling of that kind of social interaction to get you to spend more time on their platform. If Facebook sends you a push notification that a friend is interested in an event near you, they're essentially acting like a puppet master, leveraging your desire for social connection so that you use the app more. But notifications didn't always work like this. When push notifications were first introduced for email on BlackBerries in 2003, they were actually seen as a way for you to check your phone less. You could easily see emails as they came in, so you didn't have to repeatedly open your phone to refresh an inbox. But today you can get notifications from any app on your phone. So every time you check it, you get this grab bag of notifications that can make you feel a broad variety of emotions.
If it wasn't random, if it was predictably bad or predictably good, then you would not get addicted. The predictability would take out the addictiveness.
That's the same logic behind slot machines. And it's effective. Slot machines make more money in the US than baseball, movies, and theme parks combined. And they become addicting about 3 to 4 times faster than other kinds of gambling. Some apps even replicate the process of pulling a slot machine lever with the pull to refresh feature. That's a conscious design choice. Those apps are usually capable of continuously updating content, but the pull action provides an addicting illusion of control over that process. In the future, we might see healthier ways of delivering notifications. Research shows that bundling notifications, where phones deliver a batch of updates at set times, reduces user stress. Then, you have to grayscale your screen. The easiest way to attract your eye's attention on a screen is through color. Human eyes are sensitive to warm colors. In eye-tracking tests like this one, they gravitate particularly to bright red. That's why so many apps have redesigned their icons to be brighter, bolder, and warmer over the years. It's also why notification bubbles are red. A little icon like this, or this, doesn't have the same impact on your attention as this. But you can neutralize that distracting effect by selecting a grayscale color filter in your phone's accessibility settings. When you make everything black and white, your brain isn't tricked into thinking this is any more important to you than this.
I mean, there's a reason why slot machines are, bright in color and have flashing lights and ding, 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 and they have the sensory input too, right? And so just noticing that if I take out the color, it changes some of the addictiveness.
Finally, restrict your home screen to everyday tools.
Make sure that your home screen, when you unlock it, doesn't have anything except for the in-the-moment tools that help you live your life. I have Lyft to get somewhere when I need to get somewhere, maps, calendar. None of these are apps that I can fall into and then get sucked down some bottomless vortex of stuff.
If you're not sure what counts as a bottomless vortex of stuff, it helps to filter out apps that use infinite scrolling. Unlike pagination, where users have to click to load new content on another page, infinite scrolling continuously loads new material, so there's no built-in endpoint. Video autoplay works in a similar way. These interfaces create a frictionless experience, but they also reduce a user's sense of control and make it harder to stop. Research shows that people rely on visual cues more than internal cues to stop consuming something. In a 2005 study, individuals who ate soup out of a self-refilling bowl ate 73% more than those who ate out of a normal bowl filled up by servers. But those who ate from the self-refilling bowls didn't feel any more satisfied. So a visual cue, like an endpoint, is better at telling you the right time to stop than your own sense of satisfaction. And because so many apps don't have an endpoint, you have to build your home screen around the eventuality of distraction. We check our phones a lot. Most of us drastically underestimate how often we do so. But technology might not always look this way. There are ideas for alternative interfaces that give you functional choices and are more transparent about how much time you'll lose with one action versus another.
But it's a really deep philosophical question of what is genuinely worth your attention on an interruptive basis? Do people even know how to answer that question? It's a really hard question. It's not something we think about.
But for now, it's a question that everybody needs to start asking.
Thank you so much for watching. This has been episode 1 of By Design. This is going to be a new series looking at different topics in design and technology, looking at how human decisions on one end of creating something affect people on the other end.
There is so much to unpackage in that video. I've watched it several times, many times in fact, and I take something new away from it each time. But at the base level, what is genuinely worth your attention? When I think about myself in the classroom and I have the desire to pull out my phone, which sometimes happens, is my attention with my students? No, it's not. I need to rethink my behavior. And I feel kind of silly that I've gone out and spent all this money on the fanciest new iPhone, an Apple Watch, a brand new iPad Pro, and they're asking me to turn off all the beautiful features that make it shiny and cool. And so I struggle with that myself, but I have taken away a few things, and I've modified my home screen, and I've turned off a lot of notifications. And I really like turn off all notifications unless it's a person, and it's a person that's a priority to you. So how can we help? Number one, leading with empathy and leading with some questions and dialogue. I know this is hard. We are trying to have a 12, 13, 14-year-old make decisions about their phone use that Google, Facebook, and Apple are trying to push them in a different direction. That's difficult. It's difficult for adults to make that decision. Limit those notifications. Turn them off. Make it so it's the important people. That's what's best. And what I like also is, as a family, setting up some of those rules. So at night, if you want to say, gosh, we're not going to use phones after 8, it's easy for me as a student to say, my mom won't let me. It's after 8. It's not my fault. It's the rule. And that might help bring down that anxiety for the student to stay engaged all night long. And I think it's important for us to model good behavior. We always don't do that as adults. We're learning as well. I read a study last night that there's a significant increase in anxiety and depression amongst middle-aged women who use a high amount of social media. So it's not just teens, it's also adults. And the article was talking about mothers who have children who feel like they don't have a friend group, or they're looking at pictures of their friends and their friends' children. So it goes across generations. So some things to do. This is an iOS. I'm most familiar with Apple devices. Using the built-in tools to set screen time, to set downtime. I have that set, but unfortunately every time it goes off, I pick up my phone and I look to see what the notification is. So it sometimes has an adverse effect. Or setting app limits for your students or yourself. So myth or truth? Is it parents or students or children that spend the most time with devices? Well, research tells us it's parents. And this is pre-pandemic. I'm going to compare that to current statistics in just a moment. So about 9 hours and 22 minutes, which I get. Parents are probably on their computers for work, and it decreases with age. Now this is looking at 2018. That's about that 8 hours and 41 minutes, which we just talked about. Go to today, or this is March 2020. We're up to 13 hours and 28 minutes per day of screen time. A dramatic increase in kids watching us on our screens. Along with that, the Pew Research Center asked parents, well, during the pandemic, were your rules tighter or did you back off? 39% say the rules become less strict. It's become normalized. Part of it, I get, we were stuck at home, but now it's time to rethink this and do similar actions what we did and tighten things back up for the time being and possibly change them for the future. But I needed to tighten things back up within the building. Who doesn't know a teenager that doesn't have some drama in their lives? And this can explode on social media. We have cyberbullying, being left out. We have mean girls, mean boys. I'm going to leave it at that. Cyberbullying. We have the prevalence of sexting within teens. And in my position, I've seen it all. I've seen the good, I've seen the bad. And luckily for me, the bad is not a huge part of my job. And when I say the bad, I say the really bad. And most of our students are doing a great job. But when they don't, they're facing a significant burden throughout their day. How do I go to school and face everyone if that picture was posted and shared? I don't have any friends. Everyone's turned on me. Or so the post said last night, or the group message said last night. We, people my age, something bad happened at school, we went home and we were okay for a while. Now it's following everywhere. And sexting, wanting to feel included, wanting to feel accepted by people around us, sending pictures without thinking. So how can we help as adults? Once again, empathy and dialogue. Yep, this is hard. This is hard for me too. Well, if you post that picture, have you thought about the consequences? And I think that with our students and our children, to have a real, before giving them the phone or when you give them the phone, of saying, what is right? What is wrong? Give me an example of something you would post. If you do post it, who do you share it with? I think it's important to be very specific. As I said in my job, I've had to deal with some things that were unpleasant. And what's very helpful for us to address is if there's evidence. We always tell the students to block, to take screenshots, and to share that with us so we can help them better. That's important information to have. And for many years, we talked about Upstanders at the middle level and did a lot of curriculum. And it was about sticking up for people that are vulnerable, sticking up for people that may not have the ability to stick up for themselves. So how can we teach our students to be upstanders? And we do have many that are. And as parents and caregivers, I know that when I first started teaching and there was a problem, I would jump into action, I would address the situation, and I would solve it, was always my go-to. And I've since learned through a lot of trial and error that my first job is to listen. My first job is to understand the situation. And perhaps through that conversation, the student will work it out with a conversation. And I may ask, is this a time that I'm listening? Or is this a time you need me to do something? Because many times the listening is key. Isolation. Do we find students that are disconnecting from us? It was a hard thing for us to provide instruction and know that the student wasn't responding to us. Or even at home, probably understanding that the student was not connecting at home. So as we move forward, where the online world becomes more important than the offline. And I think this is only going to get more difficult. Facebook just released that they lost $20 billion, I believe, last year on creating the metaverse, in which we will put on glasses and step into this digital world, and we'll go shopping and we'll go on trips. Microsoft just purchased a large video game company to invest in the meta. And companies are talking about it, this digital world that we might live in. So I think we have to be very cautious of how we move into this, especially with teens and tweens. Students might like to have their relationships online, and I spoke with our counselors, and they said this is huge, of asking students, who are you talking with online? Are your best friends online? We know that people game, putting on the headsets. I was talking to one of my students in my classes this week about, tell me about gaming. Tell me about your experience. Do you know who you're talking to? And the answer was, well, no, but I can mute them. So making sure that we have conversations to see who they're engaging with if it's in the online world. So once again, starting the conversation of, well, gosh, you're in your room all the time. What are you doing? Is your device with you? One of the things that always comes up in every study, every presentation I read, is taking the phones out of the bedrooms. It's one of the number one things that we ask parents to do and to charge them someplace else. Pretty simple thing on the surface, but I also know that it's extremely difficult for me even to get a Chromebook away from a child. And I know that it's probably far more difficult for you to take a phone away from a child at home. But reminding students that the balance, that face-to-face friends are important. In my class, it's a computer class, but there's time to close the lid. There's time to talk to your neighbor. It's not always easy to say, close your lid. And they look up at you and they inch it down 1 inch. Close your lid, inch it down another inch. Close your lid. And eventually, after about 4 minutes, we will get to a closed Chromebook. But I'm not going to give up. They're not going to win that battle with me. So if you find your student where they need help, to be the bridge to bring them back step by step. And this happens through a lot of dialogue and understanding what's happening. So we have the worst case scenarios. It's not something that I want to spend a lot of time with, but I think it's important to acknowledge. So there are 3 slides here. And there's the green light. These are normal things that teens and tweens go through. And when I was talking to our guidance counselor, she suggested it was much like learning to swim. You put them in the water and they're sitting on the side of the pool, hanging on, you're watching them, and things seem to be okay. They're learning about popularity, they're learning that they have emotions, and they're showing their emotions, they're taking some independence. These are all normal things we would expect. But if things start to go wrong, if their head starts to dip under, you might want to stand up and take a look. In my class, if I see students laughing and pointing, not that They can have fun in my class, don't get me wrong. But I'm going to probably stand up and use some proximity to just look over their shoulder, see what's going on. And that's what I'm talking about here. If you start seeing that there's a big battle with the phone that's unusual, wanting to be alone more than usual, it's time to take notice and see which direction it might go. And then ultimately, using the swimming analogy, if you see that head dip under, it's time to stand up and possibly extend an arm, jump in. It depends upon the circumstances for the student. We know that self-harm, talking or writing about suicide, we have grades dropping, not sleeping at all. Those are times where to step in to ask questions. And it could be a question such as, give me on a scale of 1 to 10, how was your day? But I also had the conversation with a counselor. Can you tell I talked with them at length about this presentation, which was amazing. They said, you got to follow it up. Be more specific with that question, because any teenager is going to say, oh, it was fine. It was 6. Tell me more. I really loved that. Well, tell me more. You want that app? Well, tell me more. Having them possibly write down, leave a note was another suggestion. And also looking at the different categories. Are they having a balanced relationship with family members? Are they involved in activities? Are their grades going quite well? Do you have any concerns with drugs, sexuality, suicide, and depression? So looking at those different buckets and basically seeing if there's anything that might raise an eyebrow. And if there is, and you need a conversation starter, which I sometimes do, Google it. Here's one that I thought. I've noticed you're not sleeping at all. It seems like you're going through a hard time. It's sometimes hard to find the right words. That's why I like some of these conversation starters. And even as a teacher, we practice these things. We're given scenarios and we train for them, to run through them, to model them, because I don't always know what to say. I think when I first started teaching and I was 21 and parents would say, how should I raise my kid? Ooh, that's a loaded question for a 21-year-old. So this really helped me understand how to react. And then if they do like their phone so much, perhaps add apps that are useful, such as Calm. I know I downloaded that during the pandemic. I think it was free to teachers for a while. And there's a number of apps. I know for me, I really like, in the morning, I like a good exercise app. I like to meditate. Not nearly enough, but when I'm in the middle of a meditation, a notification goes off, that I know I don't have my phone right. So making sure that we're taking that time to turn off the notifications, to use these apps where they might be appropriate. Our counselor suggested that she really liked the virtual hope box. I haven't used that one, but there are a number. So now that we looked at some of the warning signs, what's the positive news? What are we doing right? Because I think we are doing a lot of things right. This one I'm going to use with caution. Yes, teenagers do make new friends online. And yes, sometimes it's highly appropriate, sometimes they're supportive, but it's time to ask as adults, who are they? Where do they live? So I use this with a little bit of caution. This statistic of 84% boys who are more connected when they play online. I think it's good to talk online, to have fun, but perhaps know what you're sharing and who you're sharing it with. This one, I'll just address the top one in the middle. 70% of teens don't feel better or worse after using social media. That seems like they're relatively balanced with that. So we know students are using technology, they're using social media to be creative, to engage with others. These are all the best parts about my job, is to teach them those skills. And we know when it actually works, back to that study, when people were using social media and engage with family members, and it was a positive outcome. So there definitely are positive aspects of this. But as adults and caregivers get engaged, stay involved, asking those questions that students may not always want to answer, See what they see. Back to the point of when I'm peeking over their shoulder, when I'm asking them, tell me what you really like about it. Do your friends use it? What's the worst thing about it? What's the best thing about it? Can you go without it for a day? Asking specific questions and find the fun. That's what my class hopefully is about. Yes, we do tech work, but we also make websites about vacations. We make video tutorials on how to bake banana bread muffins, which everyone was baking during the pandemic. Possibly how to make a podcast. Podcasts are wildly popular. So having students create podcast commercials, which was a big hit last year, to this year, creating using Photoshop to create superheroes with their faces on them and animating them. I did ask his permission for this, but I don't think he completely knew what he was getting into. Too early in the year, we use Creative Cloud to create Facebook posts, social media posts for our school, talking about the audience of them, talking about internet safety with them, and it's fun. I have a fun job, and I have fun kids to work with. So if you're looking for more information, Common Sense Media is a gold mine of specific information, specific conversation starters you can use. It's not only apps, I believe it's movies, video games. Video games are a whole nother universe that I don't quite understand. And this gives me some background knowledge with that. And with that, these are all the people that are looking out for your children in Anoka-Hennepin. This was taken from our counseling website on the district level. So if I know that a student is going to connect with me, if they're not going to share information with me, I'm going to look at this and think, who will they connect with? And as parents and caregivers, if you notice your child is having an issue, a great place to start is with your school counselor. They're really helpful in giving you a point in the right direction and to analyze how they can help you. That's our job. So these are a lengthy list of people that are looking out to make sure that we can set some boundaries and students are successful in our schools. So with that, I thank you. This is the end of the presentation, the official presentation. We are going to move on to the roundtable discussion in just 1 second.
Well, thank you for sharing that information. It supports our students and our families and our community. Now we are going to transition to the panel. It's school district and community experts and our students as well. Our panel will be answering questions that were submitted from participants when they registered for the event. At the end of our panel discussion, we will share additional information. If you have questions that come up along the way, thank you to Will, Lily, Taya, and Cindy for being here with us this evening.
So thank you for sticking around with us. I feel like I'm on a talk show here. But we are going to start with our first question. This is going to go to Cindy to my left. And we have our two students further to her left. We have Lily and Taya, who are my two students that were giving me the eye when I was talking about how I had shut down things on their computer or the Chromebook, lowering the lid. It's not one of you guys, is it? No, never, never. Always perfect angels. So the first question goes to Cindy. What tips do you have for parents when kids are first asking for social media? How do you help them be set up for success? Also, ideas for introducing social media.
You know, one of the things that I think is important to start is looking at what is the age range of the app. A lot of the apps have the identified age that you'd have to be able to subscribe to it. And I think that's a really good first place to start, but then having that conversation with the young person that says, what interests you about this? What is it that you most want out through this app? What is it that you're looking to do? And having that conversation. And I think it's really important to be able to pause. that just because somebody is asking for that app because they're really wanting it, to be able to say, I'm not ready to make that decision just yet. Let me do some research. Let me look into this. Let me see if I can find more about it before making that decision to then go on and sign up for it. I think that's a really great place to start. And then what do we help them to be successful? I always coach parents on being able to do little bits at a time, right? Let's just start with this one app. Let's see what this is like. Let's build some trust and some understanding, and can you follow through with the expectations that are outlined? To be able to set time limits on them, I love that was as part of the slide presentation too. Having those limits, having those boundaries, and having those clear expectations. One of the things that the rules we have in our home is that you don't get to post pictures of other people without their permission. That, like, let's just start here, let's just have some really clear basic boundaries, and let's see how that goes, and then we can add some more later.
Yeah, and I think that's really important because we're going through that now with students requesting extensions for us. And I told the student, well, I thank you for the request. We're going to look at it, and we'll get back to you in a week or two. It was not going to be immediate, but we're going to take it under consideration because if it's valuable for an education purpose, for possibly a social emotional purpose, it makes sense for us. So we're going to take that under consideration. So, Lily, you ready for your first question?
Sure.
So in this case, what's your favorite thing about social media?
My favorite thing about social media is seeing people like express themselves in creative ways and seeing people that are like very similar to me, seeing people who have the same interests as me, who like the same TV shows as me. It's really cool just seeing what other people do and just exploring it.
Perfect. So this third question goes to myself. How do I model good social media and technology use? I think that's difficult because I'm walking through the building with a computer in my hand. Apple Watch is usually telling me to go somewhere. My phone's ringing, trying to balance this all, but yet I'm saying, hey, you put your Chromebook away. And so it's just through, I think, little things that I can do to model good behavior. As I said, when we were with my class, to try to have them create posts, to be specific. I don't think we can assume that students know how to create content without having them do it, having a conversation about it, because they're going to make mistakes. So I think it's really important to take those moments to have them and share it with you. And I know students don't like this, but possibly follow them and make sure that that's part of the routine. Absolutely. So the next question, Taya, as a student, what are you seeing in terms of cyberbullying in your school?
I don't really see a lot of cyberbullying at school. I'd say the only thing that I really see is that if someone makes a post, I've seen people maybe at school in class will just say like, why would you post that? Oh, you didn't look very good in that post, or they'll point out something wrong. But that's pretty much the only cyberbullying that I do see.
Do you find that when people get that feedback, do they take down the post? How does it make that person feel?
I'd say it wouldn't make them feel very good. I would probably take down the post or just make it private or make it so only my friends could see it or something.
Okay, perfect. So Cindy, what are the warning signs for parents to watch out for?
I think parents historically are the best indicators of what is really going on with their young person, right? That they know their kids the best, they know whoever they're caring for the best. And so when we start to see this kind of change in baseline, right? When we start to see incredible excitement over the phone and not being able to then put it down, maybe we start to ask some questions. Or if there is kind of the inverse, this significant withdrawal from family functions, gatherings, activities, other interests, we would, again, let's start asking some of those questions when we start to see some of those kind of red flags to pick up, to be able to ask, what is it that's going on? Is there something that's upsetting you as it relates to your phone? Or I see this kind of behavior change that happens whenever you pick up your phone, your tablet, your electronic device, and just start to inquire rather than jumping to conclusions.
So if your student says, I don't want to share, I'm not going to answer that question.
Yes, yes. And I think it's okay to be able to give them that space, right? I mean, adolescents are at a point where they are developing their independence and autonomy, and they're wanting the sense of growing and maturity. And to be able to respect that, recognize, okay, when you are ready to talk about it, I'm most willing to listen. I'm not a safe person for you. If now's not the time, you let me know and I'll make the time for you.
Perfect. There's a follow-up to that. What are the other long-term implications you have seen of social media?
Lots of anxiety and lots of depression. And how it impacts their self-esteem, their sense of who it is that they are and how they relate to the world. There is this dramatic shift that I think that I've seen happen specifically over the last couple of years as it relates to the pandemic.
So Taya, or let's see. Let me look at my sheet here. I don't have my glasses on. I'm apparently officially old. So this is Lily.
Yeah.
Yes. When did your parents let you use social media?
I got a phone when I was at the end of 5th grade for my birthday, but I didn't get like Snapchat and TikTok, those 2 apps, until about 7th grade when I noticed that a bunch of other people in my school had those. And I was like, uh-oh, am I missing something out? Am I missing something from this? I don't want to miss anything. I don't want to be left out. So that's when I asked to download it. And of course I have to ask first, and then I just got it just to fit in kind of.
And so a follow-up to that would be, out of your friend group or those that are in your grade, so you're 8th grade, they're both 8th graders, do you feel as though that most of your friends have social media?
I do feel most people have social media. Most people post just to maybe gain likes, gain followers, and most of those people I've noticed that are at our school. And some people that get a phone, one of the first things they download is Snapchat because, oh, everybody has that. I also want it as well. I've noticed that.
Okay, perfect. So the next question is one that I'm going to answer is, what is the school district doing to limit students' access to certain websites and social media platforms? So as I said, we do filter. It's the Children Internet Protection Act. It's a base level where we have to filter for harmful content or obscene content. And, that filters out a lot of the bad stuff. We also use things such as Google's Safe Search to limit what students can search back, because we know that a search can have unintended consequences. And the web is a big place. So that's our base level, and that's what our high school students and everyone gets. If you have a Chromebook of ours, it has a GoGuardian extension that basically brings back that web traffic through our filter. So at home, we're still meeting federal requirements. And as I've talked about, we've added different levels at different age groups. So at the middle level, we added GoGuardian to have more control, because that's what teachers said they wanted. They wanted the ability to shut it down. I can send out announcements. They love when I open up the chat window and it disrupts everything they're doing. Or the first time I said you can only use one tab, and it shut down all their tabs. And the students that were highly organized with multiple windows had a few words to say to me. So those are some things that we're doing at the middle level, and at the high school level, that they should have more freedom. We would hope that we're teaching them at the middle level with these guidelines so that they don't need these tools, that they can make the choices on their own and be successful. So those are some things that we're doing within the school district. And it's conversations from teachers, it's advisory lessons, it's education, and it's trying to understand where they're at, where we're at. I'm trying to teach teachers. So it's all of us learning together through this process. Let's see here. The next question goes to Taya. What's the most challenging aspect of social media for you? Oh, I went out of order. My fault. Yeah. Let's go up. Do your parents have any restrictions on your use of social media?
Yeah, she does. They've definitely gotten better though. Since when I first got a phone, it was definitely more restrictions on all the apps. I mean, I didn't have much when I first got it, but it was definitely stricter. And now that I've had social media for longer and she can trust me more for it, the two main ones are if I want to get a new social media app or a new app on my phone, I have to ask and just tell her some things about it. And then she'll tell me yes or no if she thinks that's good for me or not. And the other thing is on like streaming websites like Netflix, for a while when we first got it, it was restricted to a kid's account, and then when we had it for longer, she opened it up to like TV 14, PG 13.
Okay, so using the built-in restrictions with apps to help guide you to the content that was appropriate for your age.
Yeah.
So I asked sixth graders this morning of, do they get to download apps, anything they want? So I guess I'll ask you as an eighth grader, do you feel as though that eighth graders have that freedom? Do you think that many parents have restrictions?
I've seen, definitely comparing like 6th, 8th grade, that I had a lot of friends in 6th grade that had restrictions, and now they really don't. They kind of just all vanished. So no, I don't see many restrictions.
So probably positive behavior, recognizing that they're responsible. So when I asked the sixth graders this morning, it was roughly, and it was a quick poll, I would say 60% said that they had restrictions, and the other half said that they could download whatever they want. So it was a really mixed response, and it was a quick little straw poll, so I don't want to give any depth to it, but I was surprised by the number of students that didn't raise their hands, that were given a phone and can do whatever they want. So once again, boundaries seem to be important. So let's look at my sheet. We are up to Cindy. As a parent, what advice would you give parents or guardians to start a conversation with their children about their use of social media?
I think the conversation starts with what parts are you interested in? What is driving part of this? And then being able to kind of shift that conversation to what are our values as a family, as a unit, and how is it that we can still express these values within that social media world? And putting in those boundaries, putting in those limits, those expectations that support those family values. To be able to really, a lot easier to open them up as that trust is then built, rather than scaling them back that gets to be then punitive. And so starting that conversation with, what do you want? What is it that you're interested in? Here's the boundaries, here's the guidelines that we're setting, and building that trust to then be able to allow more as time goes on, as that trust is built.
Which I like, because I went the opposite way, and we just took something away, which is much more difficult than giving it to them. So
Absolutely.
I told my eighth graders that they get it back next year.
It is a challenge.
So Lily, what do you do to self-regulate your technology use? How do you make sure you're not using too much?
When I get home from school, I put my phone away. I first finish my homework because that's #1 priority to me. And then I try and find something to do. Maybe it's draw, maybe it's bake, or clean my room or chores. I try not to go on my phone as much, but there is times I'm like, okay, I may as well check up on everybody, check what's going on. And that's when I do that sometimes. But I know since of quarantine, I have for sure cut down these last couple of months, which I think is everybody should do, because I know I'm a little happier. I love that.
So the next question, where can I learn more about social media and be up to date on the latest trends? As I said, Common Sense Media is a great place to start. NetSmart is a program that I used to use in the past, but really just Googling conversation starters with kids to tell me more about Discord. And Discord's huge. We should all know something about Discord, because students are using it quite frequently to make sure that everyone understands what it is and where it can go right, where it can go wrong. So I would start with that, and I think on our district website, under the technology section, there is, it's not internet safety, but there's a tab where we do have some links out to that. It's digital citizenship, I think is the exact tab. And so we try to keep that up to date with certain trends, or certain, I should say, resources that will highlight the trends that are happening today. Because it is hard to keep up. I can't keep up, and I look at what they're doing, and I have to say, what is that? Mm-hmm. But they're all usually good with having a conversation if I ask. So Taya, you have the last question that's on this sheet. We might have some more here, though. What's the most challenging aspect of social media for you?
There's a lot of challenging things about social media, but I would say the one most challenging thing is probably trying to fit in with everyone else. Like when I was younger, I would just have a social media account private for just my friends to see, and I didn't really care what I post. But now, like going into middle school and being around so many other kids that are different than me, and I see them doing different things, then I want to fit in. I don't want to be the one doing something different from everyone else just all the time. So I'll find myself like seeing someone else's video or picture, and I'll be like, well, I should try that. I should maybe change what I'm doing and do what they're doing.
Yep, it's hard to see a constant stream of things where someone gets, what's a big like account on a photo that you've seen recently?
Instagram?
Yeah, from a friend.
Like the number of likes?
Yeah.
Like,
Hundreds?
no, I've seen thousands from like a few of the popular girls in our grade because they know people from other schools, so they
Okay.
get a lot.
So thousands of comments, and then not only likes, but also comments within there. Yep. So it's very popular, and then in that case, there are probably accounts that might be open that might not have restrictions to them. We have a few more. Do we have time for more questions? Okay, we have just a few more here. So this one is, what advice can you give parents about having the conversation with their child about participating in social media challenges, TikTok challenges that cause disruptions to schools? It's a big one, and this is probably the first year that we've had to address this, where I've received emails from the district that have come from, I think, probably either law enforcement or, trying to understand if it's a credible risk, if students are going to destroy the bathroom in the school or going to try to take something, and it's hard to stay current. So when I get them, it's very eye-opening to be like, oh, they're going to do what? Luckily, I think at my building, we haven't seen too much of a result of those, which has been good, but it's always alarming when you're making announcements that something might happen. And I think it's better to be safe than sorry, to acknowledge them, and I think it makes everyone pay attention and hopefully ask questions about, how are you using TikTok? Are you engaging in this? To have that conversation.
And the one piece that I would maybe add to that part too is for parents, caregivers to have that conversation with the young person, right? When there's that blast email that goes out to the whole school and everybody's parents, for those parents and those caregivers to ask, what do you know about this? What is it that you've heard about this? Is this an experience that you've seen or that your friends are talking about, to really be engaged in that conversation with the young person, right? And with that, then I would even add, with the social media accounts, to follow your young person and to follow them, not necessarily because you're commenting and liking and you're posting to what it is that they post, but to be able to be aware, so that there's this kind of sense of a transparency, right? With being aware of what is it that they are posting. And if there are then concerns, then to be able to bring that up offline.
Certainly. So Cindy, another question with that is, how do you monitor children's social media use without them feeling like you are trying to control their social media use? How do you find that balance? As a parent myself, this is a struggle. To be honest, it really is. Being able to set those time limits, being able to be mindful. I find with my daughter, who is 12, that we have a lot of those conversations of, what is it that you're posting? Or really engaging with her as even she's using her phone and posting a whole variety of different things, that if she knows that I'm there and if she knows that I'm engaged and I have conversations with her, she's more likely to continue to follow those rules and the expectations that we already have laid out. Certainly. And so another question is, how much screen time is recommended each day for secondary students? I can't tell you an exact amount. Do you know exact amount? Interesting enough, I was just meeting with a student earlier this week, and we were talking about how he had this belief that he's addicted to his phone. And he's like, I've been tracking it, and I have spent 4 hours a day on my phone. And he was just blown out of the water that this was a really long time. And when you think about
You break down a student's day and they spend a good 8 hours in school and they spend a good 8 hours sleeping, and then they spend 4 hours on their phone after that. Like, this gets to be a pretty significant chunk of time. I think everybody's time can be very different depending on what they're using, how they're using it, what's the intent. And so to be able to monitor that and have those conversations as a family unit.
And certainly, I think it varies student to student.
Absolutely.
Some students have a healthy relationship. They're not going to get angry when you take away the phone. They recognize that there should be boundaries, which, Lily, it sounds like that you do recognize that. And so that seems to be a healthy relationship. But I also know students who, even with an hour, can just fall into a rabbit hole and end up in that infinite scrolling. And just watching the video on the infinite scrolling makes me just cringe, because crazy. We've fallen victim to, I mean, even when I was looking at the Star Tribune the other day, it didn't end. I was recycling stories, and I thought, whoa, the Star Tribune is doing this just to keep me more engaged, and to know that every app is doing that. And so knowing that it can very easily turn into 4 hours and then 6 hours. So with that, I want to thank these two, Taya and Lily. They have done an excellent job tonight. They do an excellent job in my class. So I thank you for coming out. I thank your parents for bringing you here on this cold night. And Cindy, I've never met you before, and so it's nice to meet you and create this partnership. And I think that's truly what it's about, is creating the partnerships, because we all don't have the answer.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I've learned so much this week from talking with our guidance counselors about this topic, that it was nice to kind of dust this off and to dig in and look at what's happening post-pandemic, because it's time to reevaluate our boundaries and probably tighten them up a little bit. And I think that's what I'm trying to do within my own building, and I would encourage families to just evaluate, do that self-assessment, and see how it's going. So with that, we're going to turn it over to...
Thank you. Again, I just want to say thank you so much to the panel this evening. It's fabulous information to get out to our families, our communities. Thank you to all of our participants who are here with us this evening in person and those online. You're taking time out of your busy schedules to join us this evening, and we truly appreciate your partnership in supporting our students and families of Anoka-Hennepin. We have a couple last final Parent Engagement 360 events for this school year. We have Surviving to Thriving, which will happen on February 15th, and then we're concluding with Chemical Health on April 7th. For more information and to register, please visit our website at ahschools.us/ParentEngage360. And again, searching on the website, Parent Engage 360, you'll find these. Thanks again. Take care. Have a safe, warm evening. Thank you.